Warrior Nun literally means everything to me. It's such a fantastic show, and I just think that it feels like it ended with a lot more heart and story that could still be told. You know when you watch a show and you just think that was just my show, I loved it, it was everything. And I feel like that was just Warrior Nun for me. I just really loved it, and I hope that we get more.
Yeah, I'm fighting so hard for Warrior Nun. It's not just for me, but for the younger generation to be represented in a series like Warrior Nun.
It's about more than just Warrior Nun as well. It's not just Warrior Nun that's been cancelled. There's other shows like 1899 and so many others. I could be here listing shows all day about with fans that have been upset about it, but I've never seen such an uprising as I have with the Warrior Nun fandom.
There's just such a big community behind Warrior Nun now pushing for it, and it just spoke to a lot of people through the religious trauma it portrayed and the representation it showed.
Warrior Nun is a collection of different stories that need to be told, like queer relationships shown authentically and portrayed well. A well-written story. Even with Ava, especially in the first season, watching someone fall in love with life was really beautiful. It's inspiring, kind of. It gives you hope when you see characters like Ava who have all the reasons to not be hopeful and to see them happy and thriving. And then the same with Beatrice, coming out of her shell and opening up to people and embracing who she loves. When shows like Warrior Nun keep getting cancelled, it's like telling people that their stories are important, that they don't deserve to be heard and basically don't matter. So when you get it all in a show and it's done really well and it's a really enjoyable show, aside from all of that, you have to fight to keep it.
Hi, Simon.
Hi there.
Thanks for being with us today.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for all the work you guys have done in the OCS Newsletter and just in terms of organizing the fandom. I really appreciate everything you guys have done.
Thank you. It goes out to everybody in the fandom. We're just a small little percentage of that. So I'm going to jump right in with the hard questions first. It's been stated that Dean came to you with the material for the Warrior Nun movie, and you ended up making it into the Netflix series that we know and love. Can you talk about that evolution of the rights and with Netflix?
Sure, of course. Well, as you know, Warrior Nun is based on an existing IP, which means that, as a writer and as a showrunner and as a producer, I either develop original ideas on the one hand, which are mine, or I work on pre-existing ideas that are based on other material. And so I'm constantly juggling those two things. So when Dean approached me, he had been trying to make the feature film version. And he was having, I think, a very simple issue that he couldn't see yet, that I could see, which was there was too much mythology in the movie that he was trying to do to fit into just a movie. It needed to be expanded into a longer format. And I think also the ambition of the film as an independent film, it was going to be very difficult to get the budget that he needed to make it as an independent film. Whereas in the television world, it's easier to amortize the cost over many, many episodes to do something that's got more scale. And so I kind of explained that to him when I started rewriting his feature script. I realized very quickly that there just wasn't enough real estate to tell the story the right way. And it was a big mythology, and you don't want a movie to be just mythology. It has to be character first and mythology backseat to character. And the problem with a movie that's overwhelmingly filled with mythology is that it doesn't leave much space for character stories, which is what the audience is connecting to, not so much the mythology. So I gave him that advice, and at the time, of course, I was already working in television, making shows like Continuum and Van Helsing and Ghost Wars. And so he was open to the idea right away that this could be presented as a TV show. But I hadn't really made any creative decisions about how I was going to do that. That was more just me having a conversation with Dean and asking him if he would see the potential. And that was that. I was having a meeting at Netflix discussing, and to be fair, I sort of pitched Warrior Nun as an afterthought when I realized the other ideas I had been pitching were not getting traction, and Warrior Nun was still on my mind. But I knew it had a very, and that it could have, in the, I guess you could say, in the words of what Netflix was looking for, it would satisfy kind of an audacious demand for a show that would be unique, different, and have a personality, something that would stand out in a crowded space. So that was the beginning of the Netflix relationship. And that executive at that point said, okay, I want you to come back to me with a much more detailed breakdown of what you see the show could be. So I went back and worked on that basically for, I think, a few weeks, just to kind of flesh out what the series would be. Essentially what the show is. I mean, what you guys know the show to be was what I did in those 2 weeks, was come up with, the scenario that would extend beyond the one story that Dean had presented me as a movie, that it would be, a much more television-friendly storyline where the characters were essentially the engine of the show, as opposed to a one scenario situation, which is how most movies are based. And so I contacted Dean right away, and I said, this is a possibility. So I'll need you to, basically line up all the legalities on this for Netflix to be able to basically acquire the rights from you for the television version of Warrior Nun, which he did. And then we proceeded to make sure that was all, intact. And then I presented the documents to Netflix once I knew those rights were secure. And Netflix was very happy with the document I presented. It was only like a 10-page document, but it came with a book of concept art that Dean had prepared for the film that really didn't have anything specifically to do with the TV show, but it sort of sold the tone and the mood of heaven versus hell and the demons and things of that nature that Warrior Nun is known for. And so I think that package of material helped the decision, which was very quick, that Netflix made to basically move forward and greenlight the show, which meant I had to immediately start writing a pilot and hire writers and put together a room, and the rest, as you know, played out the way it did.
Wow. Did you say 2 weeks?
Yeah, I think I did it in about 2 weeks. It might be less, but it was roughly 2 weeks from the time I had the meeting to the time I presented it was like a 10-page document. Well, you don't sit on these things. When someone tells you they are interested in something, you do everything you can to make sure that interest is preserved and
that's true.
Diluted by time.
That's
so
true.
I was not going to let Netflix wait for this. I was happy to get it to them as quickly as I could. I think it would have been faster, but we had to sort of make sure that the rights were all buttoned up legally, so that Netflix could transfer the rights from the comic to the TV, show. Also, because as the questions veer towards what's happening now, I think it's important for everyone to understand that I've never owned the rights. I've never controlled the rights. I'm like a chef who works in a restaurant. I don't own the restaurant, but I make the food. And so if you like the restaurant, it's probably because you like what I'm doing in the kitchen, but I don't own the building and I don't own the tables and chairs. and the knives and forks. Those are other people. So I know it's for people who don't understand how the business works, it must be frustrating to think that I can't just keep going and make more Warrior Nun. That's actually impossible for me as an individual. I would have to basically own Netflix to do that. And I do not own Netflix.
Yeah, I was just gonna say it's really interesting to see how something that was, I mean, I know it took longer in the long run, but something that was basically imagined in a couple of weeks, it's something that, and you said I could have taken shorter time, but it's something that we have been basically hyper-focused for the last year with a passion that was created in 2 weeks. It's kind of like an interesting comparison as to like how long it took to create and how long the passion lasts after it.
Well, that's a
But
seed. Those two are really a very, very small insight into sort of the structure of what a TV show can be. The real details of a show that I think audiences love is the journey that you take continuously after that. That goes all the way through the writing room, which is several months, which is 20 weeks of writing. Then the prep of the show and the casting, that's another 10 weeks. And then the shooting, which is where a lot of the magic happens. So I wouldn't want you to think that anything in those 2 weeks represented how the show became what it is. That is alchemy, and that is half ambition and half luck, to be fair.
yeah, no, that is definitely fair. But speaking a little bit about the campaign, essentially it started in December and last year. So we're approaching that anniversary of like the cancellation, and quite frankly, we're not entirely sure that we're done with the campaign. So it's like, did we finish, or do we have another anniversary to celebrate? But in long span of time, we did have several events at play that affected the campaign. We had the writer's strike, the actor's strike, and that's just what we know from like publicly what's happening. Is there anything that you would be able to share on your end in terms of like how was like saving Warrior Nun on your end, and like how your involvement might have changed over the course of the campaign?
Well, I mean, as soon as we were canceled last year, I realized that the momentum of the show was so big and the fan reaction was so big that there would be a valid argument to be made to bring all of that energy to focus, to try and get Netflix to reconsider their decision. I mean, I realized that we were not given, I think, the opportunity to succeed as many other shows are very, very quickly after the cancellation. We were given 28 days, I think, from the time we were on the air to the time we were told it was not going to be renewed. And obviously, that's a very short amount of time. That's not enough time, I think, to get your audience engaged and get them back. And, it's unfortunate that that was the policy. I don't think that's the policy anymore at Netflix. I think they've adjusted that. And, at that point, I was like, well, I'll do whatever I can to help, obviously, but it has to be, packaged in a process that is not about me. It's about a large number of people all sharing the same concern and fighting for, the show's survival. That at that point, I was not thinking about a movie. I didn't know there was a company that was interested in making a movie. And so I just wanted to support what was organically happening with the fans. I just wanted to make sure that the fans knew that I could see what they were doing and that I supported it. And I was really impressed with the level of organization and enthusiasm. The fact is that this whole process is something that was not like planned or programmed. in a traditional sense. It sort of just happened on its own. And so I never got the sense that that there was something I could hitch my wagon to specifically that was going to help save the show in real terms, in the sense that Netflix would have said, "Oh, we're going to entertain this, and we're going to make sure that we are going to address this fan movement and the noise and the billboards." I was never part of any conversations like that, and Netflix was not talking to me about really the show's chances of coming back. There was no mechanism, as I saw it. That was it. It was over. So when the information came to me from, I think it was from Dean, that the feature rights had not been given to Netflix, then I saw obviously there was an opportunity for the story to continue, and that was well before. That was well before I said anything on the internet or on Twitter about how the show might be saved. But the idea was that existed, that chance existed. And I think that the fans made that situation better and better in a way, because the company that eventually approached Dean to talk about that, I think were really motivated by the fans' involvement and the fans' enthusiasm. Again, I'm not part of this company. I'm not invested in, this other business model. I'm a hired gun. I'm, a freelancer. So I was really hearing about this very much secondhand, and understanding that this was a possibility, but not necessarily real yet. Until, I heard from Dean that this company was going to essentially announce that they were going to pursue the rights, and were going to make. At the time, I didn't know it was going to be 3 movies, but it was 1 movie, and so I was really happy. I wasn't thinking in terms of myself at that point. I was thinking in terms of the fans and what the fans wanted, and the fact that there was an opportunity for the story to keep going. As you may realize, I work for lots of different companies on lots of different shows. As soon as Warrior Nun was canceled, I was out looking for more work until the strike hit. So in my mind, I have to pay my bills. I have to, feed my family. So I was not waiting for anything Warrior Nun related to happen as a professional. I was out there, doing what I've done for 30 years, which is write stories, find stories, make stories, and that's it. So for me, the announcement that this company was interested was, I felt, just a thing that the fans would be happy about. I wasn't putting into any context for myself. It was just, this is good news, period. Only later did I realize that their agenda for making the film was really not going to be similar to what the TV show was. So and that's their business. It's not my business. As I said, I'm a hired gun. So they can do whatever they want, and I respect that. And at the same time, I'm still working with Netflix. So I have to be respectful of their decision on the one hand. Even if I don't agree with it, I have to be respectful of it. And I'm continuing to work with them on other things. So I'm not going to, criticize their reasons, because their reasons are theirs and they're valid within their internal process. So I felt a little bit like I am just a normal person like the fans, watching this happen around me, and not really being able to control any of it. I can't control what Netflix does. I can't control what the company, Dean's production company, is doing. So I'm more of a witness than anything to what's happening. So it was a very strange position to be in. And I certainly had no expectations. I was hopeful that I would be involved in the process as it went forward, and if these movies were going to get made. But I think what I realized, and I don't want to, I think that these movies are still something that might happen. I don't know anything about how it's happening because I'm not part of that decision. But I wouldn't ever want to say anything or do anything that would eliminate the chance that I could be involved in some capacity. So for me to sit here and tell you what I think went right or wrong is really kind of unnecessary if I hope to be involved in any future version of Warrior Nun that happens. The fact is that I have no control over whether I'm involved or not. And I don't have I don't have any leverage when it comes to these movies, and I have no business, telling these people what to do or how to do what they're doing. It's their money, it's their investment. So it's going to unfold as it does. And, if I can be a part of it in a way that I feel is fitting and acceptable, the way I work and what I do in my creative process, I'll certainly be open to entertaining that. But, like I said, I don't know what's happening. I have no contact with that company. So it's all a mystery to me. And that's why I had to put that out there when they were announcing what they were announcing. I didn't want anyone to think I was associated with something I wasn't associated with, and therefore, I had a say in it. That's just, I'm sort of like adrift here with you guys, waiting to find out what's going to happen. I have no idea what's going to happen.
So can you tell us the evolution of how the tweet came out that you told us
So
about?
the tweet so I was contacted by the group of people at this company who they wanted to strategize with me about how best to bring the news that this company was going to be pursuing the feature film, version. And I suggested to them that there was a milestone approaching for our tweets. I think we were approaching 10 or 15 million tweets of Save Warrior Nun.
15.
I think it was somewhere around that number, 15. And I thought, well, this is a very good time. If you wanted to make an announcement that your company is interested in doing this, why don't you time it for the 15 million tweet? And they thought that was a great idea. So I said, great. Well, what can I say, to the fans that's legit? What can I say to them that's concrete? And they said, well, you can't say anything specific about the business model that we're doing or who we are yet, but you can say that there is going to be a second life, if you will, of this story or these characters. And so that's why I kind of had to make the tweets somewhat vague in terms of, details, because I think as the company themselves, they weren't ready yet to sort of announce 100% their plans and all of and so I really just did it as a favor, to be honest with you, because I wasn't involved in a business way. They had not made an offer to me. They hadn't engaged me. I really just thought, well, this is good news that the fans should know that there's another entity out there, and they had it's a real company. I don't want to diminish the fact that these are people that I know in the entertainment industry that are part of this company. This is not just Dean I'm talking about. These are other people involved that I have knowledge of who are well-known professional people who are serious. They're not just somebody who came out of the woodwork and said, we want to make a movie. These are people who've made other shows, made other movies, and they're legit. So for them to tell me that they were very seriously pursuing this, I took them very seriously at their word. And I still do, by the way. I mean, I don't think nothing's going to happen. I think these people are going to make something. I absolutely think they're going to do something with these rights. At the time, I was hopeful that I would be part of it, but it didn't matter to me if I was or wasn't in that moment. I just wanted to share what I knew, which was that this was going to start happening in a very concrete way. And that money had been spent, that, deals were being made for the rights, that this was something that I felt was going to, in one way or another, emerge but without any, I don't assume anything in this business. I've had so many disappointments. I've had so many close calls to so many projects. I never say anything is something real until I'm on a plane flying somewhere to go make it, and then it feels real. But even then, it can sometimes fall apart. So it's very hard to be, I guess, too specific about what sometimes the details that I have. But I did feel like that was a good time to let the fandom know that they didn't have to mourn, honestly. That there was another chance at this. And of course, even at standing here, I still don't know what the chances are that those movies are going to get made. It's like anything in the entertainment business. You try to make things constantly, and you sometimes get them made, and sometimes you don't. Just like that meeting I had for my first meeting for Warrior Nun, I was pitching 6 other things. Those 5 other things are, they're dead and buried for the most part, but I still did all the work on them. It just turned out the Warrior Nun was the one that Netflix wanted to make. So that's the strange nature of this business. You are often, living on hope, and optimism is kind of the thing that keeps you going. And same with this idea. I mean, of course, I want the fans to have more Warrior Nun, but I can't assume ever that that's going to involve me. It's not my property. I don't have the rights. So I would be crazy to think that or assume that can only happen with me.
On December 13th last year, you made the announcement that it was canceled, which seemed like an unusual move, for a showrunner to do as soon as it found out, the news.
I have to say, it's not unusual. I think most showrunners immediately want the news out. They don't want to be. They don't want to let news like that linger if it's final.
Did you know that you would traumatize a fandom of sunsets afterwards?
No, I mean, yeah, not really that way. But I mean, I needed to get the word out. I mean, I was only given a few hours notice before Netflix was going to make a press release. So I was hoping the news would come from me versus some cold, press release at the end of the day. I mean, I didn't even get a chance to call all the cast.
Did they even actually do a press release in the end?
Yeah, I don't remember seeing it.
Actually ended.
I think they did, but I think it was probably lost in the shuffle.
There's several fans that are huge Father Vincent fans.
I'm a big Father Vincent fan.
OFV or whatever.
The tattoos, do they have any meaning related to alchemy and the Philosopher's Stone?
Well, I mean, can I ask a question? If it did or if it didn't, would it mean anything different to the story that we told?
No, but the report that they're putting together for this.
Well, look, everything is done on a TV show that you see with deliberate intent. Sometimes that intent is important to the story and vital to the story, and sometimes it isn't. I would say in the case of Vincent's tattoos, when I first sat down with Barbara, our production designer, who worked with her team to come up with it, we did talk about the different types of imagery and words that we felt would be contextual to Vincent's journey. But at no point did we ever say we have to have these specific terms for this specific reason that connects to this specific story point, because that didn't exist. So from a point of view of creative license, I think that there were things that I wanted in there, which were a mixture of, the criminal past that he had, the turn from criminal to a man of God, and then the understanding that he had, made a deal with, an angel in his mind, which was Adriel, that was, that superseded, all of those other things. And really, that was the only direction I gave Barbara in terms of how meaningful those tattoos needed to be from a point of view of Vincent's journey. From that point, either Barbara or her artists were able to build out from those concepts, crime, religion, and the connection with Adriel, and build a version of images and words that would then compose that idea, but without me spending 30 hours coming up with specific icons and images, which I have no time to do. I'm managing a 20 ring circus on a daily basis. I can't sit down and come up with these things on a one-on-one level. I have to be, there's just too, I'm like running a war, I don't stop to look at the box of bullets, to make sure it's the right box. So they were given the direction of why the tattoos are there, what's the story of the tattoos, and then the artists themselves were given freedom, which is exactly what I do with every department on the show, not just the art department, but every department, whether it's costumes, whether it's music. I tell them what the story is and what the intent is, and then they go and they do their own version of it, and they bring it back to me. And so Barbara's team, and I'm not sure who specifically came up with different quotes or different images, they were inspired by whatever I gave them, and that was exactly how it played out. And then when I saw it, I was happy, and I said yes, that's it. So I got sketches of the tattoos, obviously, that I could approve, and I could cross out ones I didn't like, circle the ones that I did like. So the ones that I circled are the ones that you see, and the ones that I crossed out are ones that never made it.
I just hear them in my head going, ask Simon for those crossed out ones.
I was thinking.
Yeah, if I can find them, there's so much material from the show that, I'm going to have to compile a book or something at some point with all this great stuff I have in my library.
Well, if you need help, I know a team of people that will help for free.
I'm sure. Sorry, Kohosh, to not get, granular on that, but we're making a TV show here. There's so many different things happening, so many characters, so many details. I wish I had the luxury of focusing on storytelling via tattoo, but I really don't.
I'm sure she's happy that we at least got the question in and that there was some sort of answer. So I think she'll be delighted.
I mean, they all have meaning. They're nothing that is there by accident. They do all have, they're all supposed to form one idea, which is the story of Vincent.
Okay, cool. So the next question I have for you, Simon. Are there any storylines you plan to do but decided to cut or change during production? Can you talk about the process for keeping Camilla alive and how she became a central piece of the OCS along with Mother Superior?
Yeah, the Camilla, it's funny that this thing blew up. I don't know who mentioned it, if it was David or something. I think early in season one, in the writing room, before we'd written any scripts at all, we were talking about, I think, a sequence where Camilla might have, not made it out of the I think it's when they broke into Arctech to get the Divinium back, that maybe somebody would pay the price or die. And then it was not even a conversation. We're just like, now Camilla stays, and that was it. There was no debate. I'm kind of curious why it's become a thing, and I think some people think, oh, well, when we saw Olivia in the role and we were like, we can't kill her, she's so good. But that's not at all what happened. This is a year before shooting almost, we had probably a 20-second conversation about whether someone should die in the sequence, and everyone agreed it was a bad idea. So we didn't do it, and that was that. No drama, no scandal. But in terms of things that we didn't do, obviously there's a lot of scenes that we had that never made it from script to filming. A lot of things changed along the way. The whole ferry scene in season one, was supposed to happen on a train, and the Tarask attack was supposed to happen on the train as well. That was the original. But when we got to Spain, we couldn't secure the trains in a way that we could guarantee that our filming dates would be locked. So we had to make a very last minute decision to move everything from a train to a ferry, which was easier for us to secure on specific dates. And then we had to move the Tarask attack into the garage space that we did because we couldn't do it on the ferry. So those are changes that production requirements will sometimes force your hand on. And then, of course, there's a lot of things that changed in season 2 simply because, Toya was not available to film season 2 when we thought, so we had a whole storyline written for Mary that we never got to film.
Awesome. The Camilla thing came from Olivia mentioned in a previous interview in passing.
I think David said something to her on set.
Yeah.
Yeah, and she had mentioned it in passing in an interview that, Camilla was supposed to die. And everyone was like, what? So that's where that whole kind of, that stems from that.
Yeah, I don't think we ever really thought twice about it. It was more just
she became a very integral character, I think, and as all of them are, I think, all very popular characters.
Knowing David, he probably started the conversation with like, did you know that we in the writers' room we were talking about killing you, but I'm the one who saved you. I told Simon not to do it. That's probably how it happened. Knowing
like
David.
A hero. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, he was here. He was an arsonist who puts fires out. Yeah.
Speaking of killing off, he had mentioned that Mother Superior was supposed to die in season 2.
Yes, she was. Yeah, we wrote her death in season 2. That was part of the alternate Shotgun Mary storyline. Shotgun Mary was going to take over her role as Mother Superior. I wrote this whole scene where Mary has to take her vows because she's not technically a nun. And she basically would have replaced, Mother Superior. But of course, when the situation arose that she had to go back to the States, we had to fix that. So the first thing to do was to spare Mother Superior.
We thank you for it.
So she technically did die briefly.
I'm happy with it too. I'm happy with it too. But ironically, the whole scene of Mother Superior's flashback was motivated by the idea that we thought we were killing her. And so we were trying to give her, more backstory and more context so that her death would have more impact. And so that's one of those happy accidents that comes out of making changes on the fly. It all worked out in the end. I'm glad it did the way it did. I'm very happy with it.
Well, this brings me to a more detailed question about the evolution of a script. We have a few pages of a script from season 1, episode 1, and there were changes in Ava's voiceover from script to screen.
Oh, tons. We cut out in that scene. In that season, I think we cut out, I don't know, I want to say like 30 voiceover lines probably in post-production that were not necessary.
Okay. And so there's a example right here. It has, I promise you, Diego, I'm going to make the most of this. But on the script, it's different. It has, this is temporary. I'm going to make the fucking most of it. Is that something that happens on set or before the screen, before the script gets to you?
There's two answers. Number one, there's 20 versions of that script that you're looking at. I don't know which version you're looking at. If it's the one that came out of the writing room or the one that we were rewriting all the way up to production. So that's one possibility because there's 20 of every episode. We're constantly rewriting them all the time. And then once we start shooting in conjunction with the directors and the actors and myself, we'll change lines just because sometimes they don't sound as good on the day. And then with voiceover, we did that in two ways. We would record Alba on the set in a quiet room the day she shot it, or we were recording it months later in post-production. So it depends. We'll make changes all in all of those incarnations. So sometimes on the day, the script will say something, and Alba will have a better version of it, and she'll say that, and I'll choose, and she'll do 3 or 4 different versions, and I'll pick one in the post-production. Or later, when we've finished the editing and we're doing the re-recording of the actors for dropping it in, which is in post-production. So we've wrapped filming months ago, and now we're just recording these lines. We'll make changes in the studio itself, and we'll rewrite lines, or I'll come in and say, oh, I think I wrote that line, but it's a terrible line. Let's say something else. So it's a constant process. It's very rare that, you know, especially voiceover ever stays as scripted, because it is a post-production process. Usually it's not part of shooting any voiceover.
We heard from David that Avatriss's storyline had to be creatively written so as to avoid Netflix's intrusion. Can you talk about this a bit more?
Yeah, I mean, David is very good at sort of amplifying, I think, the urgency. I think what happened was, as writers, we wanted to emphasize the Beatrice-Ava relationship in stronger terms constantly. And the network, I think, Netflix at times was worried that that was not going to satisfy the audience as much as the story parts were, you know? They didn't want to make a trade of that relationship for other aspects of what the show was doing. And I think part of that was because season 1 was very plot driven and very active, and there was a lot of action happening, and the Ava Beatrice relationship was simmering and not dominant, you know, in that way. It was very much I guess you could say, an undercurrent of emotional torment and attraction, but not overt. And so when we were presenting season 2, and this is very common, by the way, in development with executives and with networks, that they want you to preserve what worked the first time. You know, they want you to make the same show, but slightly different stories, you know, but they don't want you to sort of veer off the path that they perceive is the successful path. So when you look at season 1 and you look at their relationship, that was very much, you know, undertones and suggestive. Whereas in season 2, we really wanted to bust it open. And I think the network was a little nervous about that. They were nervous about the show changing too much in terms of what had worked already in season 1. So when we heard that from them, and I don't think this was anything to do with it being a queer relationship or anything like that. I think they were more nervous about just the show not being what it had been the season 1, and, you know, in terms of its execution and what was being highlighted. And so we knew that we could get away with both, of course. We knew that there was room for both, but you don't want to be combative, and you don't want to be adversarial in your opinions about what's best for the show at that stage, because we're still making the show, we're still writing it. There's room for evolution, there's room for things to happen. And I know that, having made a lot of TV, that there are arguments that you just don't need to have sometimes, because the proof is in the making of the show, not necessarily in an intellectual argument, you know, in advance of it. So I did say to the writers, I said, well, on the page, let's de-emphasize the things that we want to emphasize, because that's where people are going to get tripped up. They're going to see that on the script and think that's, you know, this is a bigger deal than it is. And we don't want them to feel that way. So we'll de-emphasize it on the page, but because I know I was going to be there every day, and that David was going to be there, you know, as well, we could essentially bring it back up, dial it back up when we were filming, in performance, in looks, in, you know, in kissing and things like that, where it felt more organic and appropriate for the show, and we knew it wasn't going to diminish the other parts of the show. It was going to enhance it. So I think that, David made it sound like we were rebels, pinned down and fighting our way out. But the truth was, I think it was more, this is how you manage expectations creatively. You want to make everybody happy at the same time you know what's best for the show. So you'd rather prove it by making it well. Because by the way, Netflix could always have taken all of that out. They look at all the cuts before anyone, and they can say, oh, this is too much Avatris, pull it out. They didn't. Why? Because it worked, and it didn't have the effect that they were worried about, which was to be, whatever their fears were not realized. And therefore, it stayed. But to suggest that we pulled a fast one is not really accurate. And Netflix gets to do whatever they want on this show. They pay for it. If they want to pull out every scene of Avatris, they could have pulled them out. They didn't. So I think it's,
except for the end credit scene that you kind of insisted that it be in.
Well, I did fight for that. Yeah. So they did want me to end the show on Beatrice sitting on the portal, and I did argue. I have that's a much longer scene, by the way, at the end, and they asked me to trim it back.
And what's missing from the scene?
It's just much more. It just takes a lot longer. Beatrice actually stops to say goodbye to, a lot more people. And she has a moment with them all, and we follow her coming into the new OCS. So it was a much more, I think, and I'm speaking also as a director here, who's frustrated that I didn't get to put all my shots in. It was a much more grander, I thought, sequence and longer. So the compromise was I could keep it, but I had to trim it shorter. So I said, okay, I'll take the win,
Speaking about, I'm just kind of thinking back to everything we have said, because there's so many lore expansion just happening right now. But one of the things that as a fandom we tend to fall into is just coming up with theories, and there's a lot of symbolism in Warrior Nun that the fandom likes, kind of this talking about and going into the details. Throughout this campaign, we've had multiple chats and Twitter spaces just talking about the symbolism and things that we think might be related to something historical, or a Bible passage or something like that. One of the most shocking ones, which I kind of remember it happened at the very beginning of the campaign. Some people theorized that Ava's and Beatrice's names and some events to their character arcs, or just the story in general, they might have been inspired by Saint Beatrice da Silva. Is that a stretch, or would you say that's accurate?
No, that's just some strange merging of real world and the show that was not organic. It was found. We came up with the names independent of that. Actually, I did all the names in the original document, and I can tell you right now, I did not go into a deep dive into choosing the names of the characters. And mainly, the truth of that is because at that time, I didn't know who they were, and I didn't know what their relationship was going to be. So for me to say that I had deliberate designs on their names based on where those characters went and the relationship they had, it's sort of impossible in a way sometimes if you're that early in the process, because you haven't actually figured out what their connection is yet. And I believe in when I first did the document, I mean, Beatrice was just a very kind of prototypical version of the character she is, she was from a very distinguished family, and that she had, she was really the opposite of Ava in a way, which made it better for the chemistry of the TV show. but it wasn't necessarily in my mind yet that these two were going to be the focal point of the emotional journey. So their names were just their names, you know. But it's great that you can find these connections, because maybe subconsciously or spiritually that does exist. You don't even know why you pick these things, and they are driven by some deeper memory that you have and that you don't even realize. I'm not sure. I mean, a lot of stuff I read that I've written, I don't even remember writing it or coming up with it sometimes. So I don't know. It's weird.
We'll call it destiny then.
Yeah.
Since we have you here and you said that you wrote the names, does Beatrice have a last name?
No.
She's just like Beyonce, just Beatrice.
Okay.
Like Beyonce or Cher. It's just Beatrice. That's all she needs.
Yeah.
It's like
It's
Beyonce or
Beyonce.
Cher. Exactly.
It's just Beatrice.
It's Sister Beatrice. Well, I mean, the funny thing is that, you know, most of the nuns in the real world, nuns' names are not actually their names. They are chosen as nuns. They can choose from saints. They can choose from biblical names. So Beatrice may not even be her real name. Just want to
Could
blow
it be
your mind.
Rebecca?
Have you written what her real name is?
Rebecca.
I'm gonna have to look in the archives, and that'll definitely go in the book. You know, that stuff will
There's a
go in the
book?
book for sure. But I can't. Well, I mean, we talked about at the beginning of the interview. I'm probably gonna have to
Oh,
put a
yes.
book together with all these details that I, you know, in the archives.
One thing that you hinted at is that you would tell us a little bit about your plans for season 3.
Yeah.
And we just wanted to check to make sure that we're.
I'm not going to do that. No, I'm kidding. I'll be very. There's not a lot to talk about other than, you know, what we hoped the bigger story of season 3 would be. And, you know, for me, my intention was, when we were writing season 2 and creating this sacrifice for Ava as a character, was because she really does sort of put herself ahead of, you know, the arc of her character from season 1 to season 2 is really one of self-sacrifice. You know, she gives up this fantasy of being reborn and having a life, and decides that it's better that she sacrifices herself for her friends and the people she cares about. So in season 3, I really wanted to kind of flip the script a little bit and have Ava's return be kind of like she's the villain in a way, not in a deliberate way, but that she comes back changed by Rhea, and Rhea basically is using her as a weapon, you know, to execute a plan, which I don't have time to get into on this interview. And the idea being that the OCS has to find Beatrice, who's gone missing, because only Beatrice can snap Ava out of this this place she is, you know, this reverie or this mindset that she is part of, and Beatrice has to save her, kind of in this emotional slash, you know, psychic slash loving way, to prevent her from, you know, just self-destructing essentially. But that Ava was going to be the bad guy.
And a question that a few people have tried working out, because obviously we know Michael came back and he had aged several years from being on the other side. A lot of people are like, would Ava have come back slightly older? Would the halo have prevented her from aging per se? Or how was it going to work that way, if you can tell us?
I can tell you. Well, if if Alba had agreed to come back and do it, she wouldn't have aged at all. She would have aged, you know, a small amount. And if Alba wasn't coming back, then we would have, you know, cast Natalie Portman and had her be, you know, a few years later. That's the honest answer. Yeah, no, I think I was prepared for any scenario. But I mean, I wasn't worried that Alba wasn't going to come back. I just felt like if there was a situation where for some reason, that didn't happen, we had a way of telling the story with a different actor. Not that was not my first choice at all. I would much rather have had Alba come back. But no, I was thinking that because she's special, she has the halo, she's different, that the aging wouldn't apply to her in the same way it did to Michael.
Yeah, I think that's
Also, she hasn't gone for very long. She's basically returned at the end of season 2. We just don't see her.
so.
Yeah, so I didn't shoot the scene where the hand comes in and takes the sword out of the case. We didn't shoot that.
What?
Oh wait, there's supposed to be a hand that comes in. Well, so
No, making that up.
torturing us, Simon. You're torturing us.
Yeah.
Well, look, it's all possibility until you
I
film
mean-
it, right? Like we change things all the time, we add things all the time until you put it on film. It can be whatever you want, whatever inspires you, whatever you think is the right version. But yeah, I mean, the intention of that was definitely that Ava's already back, and she needs that sword, and hopefully she gets it. But it was for the wrong reasons, in my mind. She was taking the sword to use it against the people she was, formerly working with.
Just to pick up on, you said that she would have come back, Dark Ava or Evil Ava. Does that then imply
Dark Ava.
that Rhea is in fact not a trustworthy character, as maybe a lot of people have theorized?
Well, yeah, I mean, trustworthy is kind of a strange word because we never suggested that anyone should ever trust Rhea. Everyone has intentions, right? Everyone has objectives. Do those objectives line up with your objectives, or do they not? Being trustworthy has nothing to do with it. It's all about whether what Rhea wants is what you think you want, and vice versa. Rhea has an objective that is Rhea's objective. It has nothing to do with the OCS, but it may come in conflict with the OCS, and that's kind of the point. Conflict isn't about whether you can trust someone or not. Conflict is about, are their interests aligned with your interests, and if when they're not, you're in conflict, and that's it. So Rhea had an agenda that was agenda that only mattered to Rhea, and same with Adriel, by the way. Adriel was perfectly trusting in his belief of his own agenda. He didn't have second thoughts. He didn't present anything other than what he was going to do, he was doing. So, but he believed it was the right thing because he believed Rhea was a threat. He was right from his point of view. Was he a threat to everyone, or was she a threat to everyone? I don't know, but presumably, yes, Rhea could be a threat to our very existence if you want to see it that way.
Now, Lilith's character had a very interesting arc, season 2. What did you see happening with her, season 3? Would she join the sisters?
Well, I think that the great journey of Lilith's character, and the journey that I really liked for that character, was that she broke away from thinking that she couldn't make her own decisions for herself, that she had to follow the dogma of the system, that she had to be a servant of another entity. I think that Lilith is the only, she freed herself from oppression in a sense through the season, right? She made her own decisions about what she was doing, why she was doing it, and wasn't just following some, plan or orders. She was deciding in real time. And so as a character, that's great because she can be, she can basically be, she can do the things that other characters can't. She can infiltrate, she can double cross, she can be the ally or the enemy depending on the situation, because she's independent of someone else's agenda. She has her own agenda. And part of that agenda was just embracing her own independence and her own power. And so I loved that we could continue that journey with her into season 3 as an agent kind of chaos that could be both things, could be problematic based on your agenda or helpful based on your agenda, but it wasn't really about right or wrong. It was really just about her not wanting to be a slave anymore.
Why the kiss with Adriel?
Well, I think in a weird way, I saw that as not just him trying to co-opt her, but her manipulating him as well. And, you know, the kiss was kind of, I guess you could say, the clearest, simplest way to present her embracing her own power. I mean, it's one thing for that kiss to be romantic. It's not really romantic, I think. It's more kind of a statement of her asserting her power. And because as a nun, she's not supposed to be with a man already. And now she's with Adriel, who's not even human. And I just felt like it was just kind of her saying, I'll do whatever I want. But it's not really founded in a relationship or affection or love. It's more in the moment of her just embracing her new power, you know? And it was really, I think, there just to kind of get the audience to see that they had more in common than different in that moment. They shared a vision of a future where Lilith had her own, she could do whatever she wanted, and Adriel was, supporting, empowering her. And a lot of people want to read a lot into it. That's fine. I mean, we do write these things to be interpreted, but there's no like right or wrong version of interpreting it. If I think it's really just kind of a moment in time. It's a flame that popped up and then went out. It's just not in her character. I think we wanted something that just was surprisingly un-Lilith. What's the most un-Lilith thing you could do here? Like, that's really was the objective. Like, what's the most not Lilith thing? Oh, that's not Lilith at all. So let's do that. That's kind of where it came from.
Yeah, it kind of reads as as you said, like kind of an act of defiance on her part. As you said, as a nun, she wasn't supposed to be with a man. And I suppose earlier in the season 2, she had that interaction with her mum, her mum was obviously very kind of displeased with any of her choices. So she probably felt, well, this is another choice, maybe that.
Yeah. Actually, that reminds me, we did cut a scene out of that. She kills her mother. Yeah, she murders her mother, and then we don't find it out until the end of the Ava fight with Lilith. So Ava, hits her in the face with the mace.
Yeah.
And Lilith is injured and disappears, and then Ava turns, and the mother is in the next room, dead, with blood all over her, and it's just like gruesome. Yeah, and I decided to cut it out because it didn't really advance the story. I mean, it was great for Lilith because she killed her own mother, which I thought was fantastic. But it didn't really. It sort of threw a wrench into the flow of the end of that episode and what was going on with Ava. So yeah, but yeah, she kills her mother.
Oh, it's good to know.
Wow.
Figured. I didn't get the sense that the relationship was very warm and fuzzy.
Well, that was it. It was like she wanted to kill her mother, but she never could before, and now she had the tools, where she could do it. Clearly.
Mm.
Again, it was like, how do we see Lilith break, in a way that's empowering, as opposed to the other version.
Well, at least we know now that her mother is dead. R.I.P.
Yeah.
Well, technically not, because we never put it in the edit, so the mother is alive. That's how these things work, Whatever makes the cut is the truth. The scenes
death.
we don't put in, we didn't put it in there because she's not dead, I guess. But in my mind, she's dead because I saw it.
I'm probably going off script now, but hopefully, maybe there's still hope to see the characters that we know and love. As you said, the no body, no death kind of rule. Not seeing a body on screen, you can still kind of bring characters back. Would there have been an opportunity there to maybe bring Mary back? Because we technically didn't really see a body, and obviously there's not like official kind of visual evidence of Mary being gone.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. You're absolutely right, because we never see Mary dead in that way that you do normally in a TV show, where you're sort of like, here it is. I guess the possibility always exists for someone to write that back in. The problem is that then you make all of season two a lie. And so all of that emotional outpouring and all of that grief and all of sort of that coalescing of the OCS, because it really was like their darkest hour, right? Their darkest moment was the fact that all the other chapters had been attacked, that Mary was dead, that this was like, there's no one left but this core group. So in a way, from a story point of view, it really was a real tragic loss that motivated these characters in a way that, I don't think you could. And then if you suddenly went, oh no, she was alive the whole time, it would feel weird in the context of what we did. But of course, the fact that we never see her dead, obviously creates the opportunity for that, for, a different story perhaps that could bring her into it. So yes, you're right. In my mind, though, it would sort of, I don't know, it would sort of take the emotional weight out of what we did in season two to say that was a lie to the audience. I don't like lying to the audience about emotional truth. If it's like a story truth or like someone trying to fool someone, that's fine. But if it's emotional truth, it just feels like if I'm an audience member and I'm grieving with those characters, I want to grieve with them and know that it's affected them and it's real, not that it's just some writer deciding, oh, I'm going to pull a fast one. So I don't know. I mean, I don't think it'll be up to me, to be honest with you.
I think I had seen some theories of that she is dead technically still, but that maybe Ava sees her when she goes through the portal on the other side, so that could technically be a workaround. Still maybe dead, but that there's a link there. But I know that there's.
That's the great thing about sci-fi fantasy. You can create your reality.
Yep, 100%.
Yeah.
I've done several interviews with the crew from season two, and every single one of them has talked about how fabulous you are with them and how much they loved working with you. And it was so great to see that they loved being on set. They loved this project as much as we did. And I just wanted to say thank you for taking the time to speak with us today and give us the answers that we were looking for and some that we did not know we wanted. But my last question.
Yeah. Go ahead.
The last question is, do you have a message to the fandom?
Oh, thank you for the love. I mean, it's just not just the love directed towards the show and to me, but the love for each other. I think that the legacy of this show for me will be knowing the community that it helped build, that is bigger than the show, means more in the real world, has actual impact. As storytellers, as filmmakers, all we want to do is impact people's lives in a positive way. That's all I care about. That's the only reason I got into writing and filmmaking, is because I grew up watching things that moved me and made me feel something, made me open my mind and my heart. And so all we want to do is return the favor as storytellers. And so knowing that there's a group of people out there that has, not just enjoyed the show, but used it as a platform to connect with other people, is really, really rewarding, really fulfilling. I got to say, it's like the best reward for making a show like this, or any show, is knowing that, long after the show is gone, there's going to be these relationships that will persist forever. And that people found something in common to bond over, to talk about, to think about, to cry about, whatever it was, that formed a relationship, like a human connection. That's just great. I can't think of anything better, actually, for considering what we do, toiling year after year, that's the ultimate outcome, really. So thank you guys for embracing the show and letting, it inspire you guys to come together. I think it's just wonderful.
Yeah, and thank you for taking the time to talking to us, taking the time to talk to us.
No problem.
Um,
No problem. And I do, as a last thing, I just want to say, I know a lot of people have been talking about the fact that there's no, there's an end game to the story of Warrior Nun, but I don't know if that's true. I think that there has to be some kind of optimism and hope that whatever form it takes, it will follow in the spirit of what we did in the TV show. It'll follow in the if not the literal footsteps, but then maybe the emotional and spiritual footsteps of what the show's intentions were, and hopefully honor that and do it again with in its own way. Because I don't claim to have any ownership over this thing. It really is the fans now. You guys own it, and so I think raise your voices together and get them to deliver the best version of what it can be. Because I think that's where your combined voices can really actually have an impact.
Okay, we heard it from you. All right.
And doing it in a positive way. It's always been a very positive fandom. It's always been, supportive, and I think that just has to carry over to the next iteration as well. Keep the positivity, keep the optimism, and people will respond. All right, thanks, guys, and thanks for everything
Thank
you guys
you.
do too. Keep up the good work.
Okay.
Thank you.
We had like
Okay.
like 5 more pages of questions. You're getting off easy today.
Well, I'll try again. We'll try again another time
Awesome.
to get
Sounds
through
Okay.
them all.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Simon.
Thank you.
Bye.